Welcome everyone to the 2024 Fall Burn Training Workshop. As I mentioned before, we're changing it up this year with a shorter workshop rather than a very long video. So this will focus mainly on information from last year and this year. So let's go ahead and get started. To go over the agenda real quick, first we'll be answering any questions that you may have from the videos that I just mentioned. After that, we'll be picking up where the videos left off and talking about some more recent smoke management program history. After that, we'll be looking at 2023 in greater detail, specifically as far as what happened. We'll be looking at a quick weather outlook for the 2024 season. After that, some final preseason updates. And after that, some workshop examples. So we'll be looking at 3 burn days from last year and sort of walking through how the process worked and seeing what happened. After that, for the very last thing, we'll be doing a quick tour of the website dashboard. It has not changed from last year, and also program files demo, just for a reminder on how to do that. All right, so just as I mentioned, are there any questions from the 2 videos that I was sending out, the basics and background and the meteorology basics from ARB? Okay, sounds like there's no questions there. If you come up with any later or you rewatch them and come up with something, definitely go ahead and email me. And I'll do my best to answer the questions there. Honestly, you can comment on the videos because I look at that too. So that's a great way to ask questions too. All right, let's go ahead and move on then. So we're going to look at the more recent history of the smoke management program. First, we'll be looking through the lens of precipitation and drought. So overall, thinking about the entire modern smoke management program from the early 2000s up till now, we've seen an overall trend towards below average precipitation, overall much drier seasons. Interspersed with that, and even along with those lower averages, we have had some very intense rain events, specifically 2021, where we saw about double what the average usually is. For last year specifically, we saw below average rainfall during the season, but the overall 2023 to 2024 winter was about average overall, around 80 to 100% of valley rain and Sierra snowpack. So it was a pretty strong El Nino year, but this is a very good example of how El Nino does not automatically mean it's going to be a crazy wet winter. We can see if we're looking at our drought maps from last year, there was no drought whatsoever through the air basin. However, for this year, no drought technically. However, most of the air basin is considered abnormally dry. Looking through the lens of wildfire now, to say that the recent history of the smoke management program has featured historic wildfire activity is certainly an understatement. This graphic here is from CAL FIRE, and it shows the top 20 largest California wildfires. We can see that 9 of the 20 largest fires have occurred since 2020, so just within the last 4 years, which is absurd that nearly half of this list is just from the last few years. Of course, this also includes the park fire, which is from this year, and it's not fully contained yet either, although it's almost contained from what I understand. So definitely, unfortunately, lots of history in the making. Further along with that, we can see all but one of the largest 20 fires have occurred since the year 2003. So wildfires have been insane in recent history. It's just part of how things work this time of year nowadays. Looking at some more data here, we can go through the chart below in a little bit, but we can overall see that the summary of everything is that we have more challenging meteorological conditions. We're having abnormally dry and windy autumns with high fire danger and extreme fire behavior. So with that, controlled burns become difficult or impossible to conduct, while wildfires produce immense amounts of smoke that prevent us from burning. At the same time, we have seen a few historic rain events that have flooded fields for weeks and also prevented us from burning, and also some prolonged periods of stagnation have become more common under abnormally strong high pressure systems, meaning that the valley just slowly fills with smoke and air quality decreases each day, reducing the amount that we're able to burn as well. If we want to start looking at some statistics here, starting with the rainfall over there on the far right, we can see that for the first 10 years, that second row there, 2002 to 2012, technically 11 years, but I needed to divide it in a pleasing way. The average there was 3.2 inches during the burn season. The latest 10 years, a lot lower, latest 5 years, even lower than that. And that includes the crazy rain event from 2021. So a very sharp decrease in the amounts of rain received. To the left of that, we can see our percentages for burn days. We can see restricted fields and no burn days are significantly more common than earlier in the program's history. Next, we have a bunch of acre information over there on the left. I added a new statistic here of acres per complaint. So that just takes how many acres you're able to burn before a complaint comes through. That's, of course, not literally how it works, but it's sort of a way to describe sort of the efficiency of how well we're able to not impact air quality. We can see that that has it's come up a little bit more recently in the last 5 years and reduced in the latest 10 years overall. We can see that the rice burn or the rice acreage is significantly lower from the first 10 years compared to the latest 10 years, as well as the total burn acreage as well. If you need any of these numbers or would just like this chart, I'd be happy to send it to you. Just let me know later. All right, so to talk about 2023 specifically, it was overall another quote unquote mild fire season where we only burned 300,000 acres, or and that's wildfire. But that's obviously much better compared to 2.6 million and 4.3 million in 2021 and 2020, respectively. So the fire season was overall similar to 2022. We did unfortunately see the highest complaint tally in 10 years. All the details for this are in the season summary report, but to really briefly go over it, there were several smaller single-day incidents, mainly in Yolo Solano County, and then we did have a sort of major smoke event where we got 10 complaints in one day due to complications with the large prescribed fire burn in Shasta. In the season summary report, I talk about how I spoke with all the air districts involved with this, and we talked about what we're going to do differently this year to reduce the chances of these things happening again. And I feel really good about what we talked about, and I think everyone does as well. So I think we're going to do better this year. That's what we're going to hope for anyway. As far as other statistics, it was about half the normal amount of rainfall received. We did burn the highest amount of rice straw in 7 years. We also had the highest total burn acreage in 12 years. We did unfortunately also see the lowest acres per complaint in 7 years, so relatively inefficient due to that high complaint tally. Again, if you ever need all of these numbers, excuse me, most of them are in the season summary report, but I can also send them your way if you need them. All right, looking ahead to this year, we are in a La Nina watch, so quite different from last year's El Nino. Technically, right now we are in ENSO neutral conditions, so neither El Nino nor La Nina, but we're expected to transition to a weak La Nina through the burn season. So the classic La Nina effects for early season rain and below average rainfall, those might only really start to take effect towards the end of the burn season, which of course sort of cancels out that early season rain. So if we're just looking at the long-term seasonal forecast available from NOAA here, we can see we have near to above average temperatures looking most likely, and also equal chances or overall near normal amounts of rain expected. So with ENSO neutral, we could potentially see, well, there's not a lot that we can get from the long-term forecasts. It could go either way, so we'll just have to watch it week to week and see what comes our way. For this year's burn season, here's all of our information. Uh, from TAC and BCC meetings, we agreed that we're going to start officially on Monday, September 16th, rather than Sunday, the 15th. So we're starting on Monday, the 16th. We're going to be going through November 30th is the current plan. We have 551,297 acres of planted rice. This is slightly less than last year's, and it's the second highest from 2016. This puts our basin burn limit at 125,000 acres. As per always, the rice burn hours are from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. with all flames out by 4 p.m. And the orchard crop burn hours are from 8:30 to 5 p.m. Or an hour before sunset, whichever occurs first. We will be running the test days of the program next week on the 12th and 13th. That's Thursday and Friday, where Western Weather will be issuing the forecasts, and air districts are expected to submit some burn acre files just with test information in there. So you can just submit all zeros and all of that. We'll talk about it more when we do the demo on how to submit files. Okay, now we can start talking about our case studies. So I gathered 3 burn days from last season, and one of them's a good day, one of them's a bad day, and one of them is a marginal day. We'll see that the good and bad days, as far as conditions, are relatively easy to figure out what to do those days, and the marginal days are substantially more difficult and unfortunately are also very common. All right, let's go ahead and jump into example 1. For those of you who have participated in the program before, your eyes are probably immediately drawn to the coordinator comments where we can see we have extended burn hours. So let's go ahead and look at the atmospheric conditions listed above and sort of pick apart what's going on. So we can see that we have a substantial increase in wind speed and a substantial decrease in the inversion strength. The 500 millibar height has also come down. This is telling us it's windier, it's less stable. So these are good things. However, we do still have a relatively strong morning inversion. It's not super strong, but it's still there. And we do have some elevated air quality, which is not ideal. If we look at the coordinator comments here, we can see that we're expecting south winds, so that's good. And we can sort of make sense from the forecast here. The conditions are expected to continue improving, and so the burn hours have been extended by 1 hour with a new flames out time of 5 p.m. Moving on to the rest of the forecast information, we can see from the forecast wind speed pattern and the transport wind pattern, more details on the south winds. Definitely some good winds there. You can also see that the inversion is indeed much better than the previous day, but it's still there, and it is expected to mix out and have some decent instability later in the day. We can also see that we're thinking it might be a wet day the next day, so this is very clearly before a storm when we might get some rain overnight and taking advantage of the decreasing stability and the good south winds. The pre-storm days are the most common time that we'll see, the early burn days or the extended burn days. So here's an example of what good dispersion looks like. We can see that we have some nice lift there on the plume where the smoke is rising quickly to the mixing height and it's staying elevated while also moving out of the area and it's dispersing aloft. So this is ideally what we want to see, if not have even higher mixing heights than that. But that overall is looking good there. So here's the results of that day. 2,409 acres were burned with 0 complaints, and the air quality actually got better the next day. You can see the details there on the right. We can see that Shasta did exceed their morning allocation, so this is just a reminder here to always request additional acres if you're planning on exceeding the allocation. We really want to take advantage of good conditions, but we also want to make sure everything is on the books. So on this day, I definitely would have approved that. seeing what the conditions were. So just make sure you call in and request that just so everyone's on the same page, everyone knows what everyone else is doing. All right, let's go ahead to the next example here. Again, from the coordinator comments right away, it is a no burn day. So let's figure out what's going on here. We see we have a substantial increase in wind speed with a forecast wind speed of 25 miles per hour. We can already guess no burn, wind speed of 25. These are strong north winds. You can see the inversion and 500 millibar heights have actually decreased, but that doesn't really matter at this point. We can also see we have a pretty sharp increase in PM 2.5. If we look at the 0 to 6 AM PM 2.5 column there in the middle of the screen, we can see that Shasta and Tehama counties are not looking so good. This is actually the day after we had issues with that prescribed fire in Shasta. So that's what's happening here. So already a really strong north wind day, but the air quality certainly didn't help either. So when it's that bad, as far as conditions, the forecasts are much shorter from us. There's a lot less to write. Unmanageably is certainly a good way to write it. I stand by what I wrote there. There's really not much we can do, so we won't we won't write something big for you to read if we know that no burning is going to be happening anyway. So, and of course, the reason we don't want to burn when we have wind speeds that strong is because we will have fumigation. So here's a little video example of what that looks like. We can see that smoke barely rises at all, and it's concentrated at the surface, and it's moving very quickly. So when you have a lot of smoke concentrated at the surface and it's moving, the chances that it's going to end up in someone's lungs are very high, especially if it's coming out of the north and blowing towards Sacramento and the Bay Area. So hence why we do what we do on no burn days. So the results of this is that, of course, no one burned anything and there were 0 complaints, and the air quality cleared quickly and was back to good levels the next day. So very good day to not burn anything and just let the air clear, and of course, not get any more smoke into the air that we already had. And the video from the last slide is not from that day. That was from a different day, in case you were curious. Okay, here is our last example, which you might have guessed is our marginal day. So it's going to be trickier, so we'll have to just go through things one at a time. Coordinator comments at first, we can see the forecaster is not stoked on what's going on. There's high stability, light winds, and it's actually Halloween. There'll be people outside trick-or-treating, so the chances of someone noticing that it's smoky is much higher on this night specifically. So overall, very marginal conditions. So these are not great conditions. However, it's also not bad enough for us to actually issue any restrictions. So hence why we'd consider it marginal. If we're looking at all the conditions on top, we can see that the inversion is stronger. 500 millibar heights have increased, so higher stability. The PM 2.5 is also increased, so there's already some smoke in the air, which is not great. And we have a very, very low forecast wind speed of 5 miles per hour. So smoke is not going to be going anywhere from what we can see here, but it's still not bad enough for us to call any restrictions. So on marginal days, the forecaster will typically write quite a bit more since things are more complicated. If we're looking through the wind pattern, you can see very light winds are expected mainly out of the north. The same story for the transport winds as well. So smoke is not going to be moved that much horizontally. We can see the stability is very high. Any morning inversion over 20 is not fun at all. Smoke is really going to struggle there. The inversion is expected to break eventually and eventually have some mixing heights close to 2,500 feet. So there's at least that going for it, but definitely some not ideal conditions to go from here. So to look at what happened meteorologically, I made some wind roses. If you're not used to reading these, The bars are showing where the wind is coming from. So if we're looking here in the upper left at the Orland Buttes hilltop, we can see mostly out of the northwest, and the length of the bars shows how often it happened. So we can see most of the time it was out of the north to northwest, a few random southeasterly gusts there, or not really gusts, but a few light winds out of the east and southeast. So we can see, looking at all four of these, that overall the forecast was good. The forecast was good, and overall it was out of the north to northwest. We can also see in the southwest corner of the valley and Plainfield that a significant portion of the day it was completely calm with no winds whatsoever. So the lightest winds appear to be in the southwest corner of the valley, where we typically see eddying and very light winds when we have these light north wind setups. Looking at transport winds, it was pretty much the same, very light north to northwesterly winds on the buttes, a few random southeasterly winds as well. So forecast was good for the day. As far as what happened, we did unfortunately get 2 complaints in Yolo Solano. The winds were extremely light, as we saw. And so what happened here is we can see that further to the north in Glenn and Colusa County, burning did occur, and some burning did also occur in Yolo Solano. So to make out what happened sort of forensically from the meteorology, it seems that, well, we had high stability, so stuff does not want to rise and disperse easily. And with those light north winds, the winds were a little bit stronger in the northwest corner of the valley, so the smoke from Glen and Colusa would most likely get pushed down to the southwest corner. From there was pretty much no wind in the southwest corner of the valley, so any of the smoke that was made there or from the north ended up staying there, and that seemed to result in the complaints. So this was the most problematic stable setup that we saw last year. So this is the one that we're going to be watching for specifically. Light north winds and high stability. We'll want to be very careful with burning in general. It probably won't be enough for restrictions, but so we're all on the same page, we might want to burn a little bit less, especially if there's already some smoke in the air. And that concludes the whole lecture portion of this workshop. Are there any questions from what I've presented here or the videos or in general? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so I think what we'll do from here is we'll just go ahead and do the tour of the dashboard and the file submission. For now, though, I think I'll stop the recording here since we have videos on how all that works. So let me go ahead and get that stopped.